So with that, let's get started. Three, two, one. All right. Welcome everybody to another, we can call this a makeshift community meeting. It's not our typical 8:30 p.m. meeting time, but I am thrilled to have Stacy Young with us. Stacy is an 18-year veteran of the Department of Justice who recently left and started a remarkable and necessary organization called Justice Connection. We're going to talk about that for a minute, but let me do a short, proper introduction. Stacy was an 18-year DOJ veteran who worked at the Department of Justice until she left in January 2025 to found Justice Connection, a network of Justice Department alumni supporting the department's apolitical workforce and the institution itself. During her career at the department, she served as a senior attorney in the Civil Rights Division, working under 5 presidential administrations and 7 attorneys general. So with that, Stacy, thank you for jumping on and being willing to talk about kind of the state of our beloved Department of Justice and the great work that Justice Connection is now doing.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here. It's always fun to speak with other DOJ alumni.
Yeah, it's a heck of a club that we belong to. We had the honor of representing the American people for years or for decades, and I don't mind admitting, since retiring, I still miss it every day. But I like to think that both of us are still involved in the justice mission, but we're doing it from the outside in another way. So, let me start with this. Tell the people a little bit about your work at the Department of Justice, and particularly your work in the Civil Rights Division, which it's such important work, and it's one of those divisions that seems to have been decimated in this second Trump administration.
Yeah. So, like you said, I was at DOJ for 18 years, and also, like you said, it was an incredible honor. I mean, there's very little you can do in life that has the same gravity as being able to walk into a courtroom and say, "I represent the United States." It's a remarkable thing to do, and I think what we're seeing now is that a lot of people there are being told, you no longer represent the United States, you represent Donald Trump. And that is a just transformational shift that really creates such risks to the current state and the future of the rule of law. So I commend everybody who is staying at the Department of Justice and is committed to remaining there to try to uphold the rule of law from within. People are making remarkable sacrifices, and I think we all need to be supporting them during this time. So as to your question about what I did at DOJ, I spent 13 years at the Civil Division as a litigator, defending U.S. laws, mostly in the realm of immigration, actually. So when the administration would be sued, my office was the office that would defend it. Our clients were mostly the Department of Homeland Security, the State Department, and the Labor Department. And I litigated both in district courts and courts of appeals throughout the country, and also at times in the Supreme Court. So then I spent 5 years in the Civil Rights Division. I was in a small office there where I enforced a statute that prohibits discrimination based on national origin and citizenship status. And like you were saying, the Civil Rights Division, which is one of the most important offices in DOJ, it enforces our nation's civil rights laws. It has been largely decimated. At this point, by our estimate, 75% of the lawyers there have been purged. That is a stunning number, and people still continue to leave. That purge was largely the result of intentional actions by this Department of Justice to get people out. They wanted the people with institutional knowledge and really a moral compass out of the picture. And the work they're doing in the Civil Rights Division is so far from what the division has always done. They issued mission statements on day one of the current head's tenure there, Harmeet Dillon, specifically saying that the division was no longer going to really enforce civil rights laws as it always has, and it was instead going to push this president's agenda, much of which, in terms of civil rights, is focused on anti-DEI work, pursuing universities because of alleged anti-Semitism, um, really protecting the rights of favored groups, and at times going after disfavored groups, actually weaponizing civil rights laws to pursue vulnerable Americans. So, the division is really just, a shadow of its former self. And we still have civil rights laws on the books, but they don't mean much if nobody's enforcing them. So what we've seen there is particularly devastating.
So, it's hard to fathom a Department of Justice that went from protecting and promoting civil rights to it sounds like almost working against civil rights, suppressing the votes. But voter integrity sounds like a little bit of a disguise, right, for trying to find ways to suppress particularly minority votes. And that kind of takes us to the recent Washington Post article that talked about just how devastating this has been to the Department of Justice and, by extension, the American people. Anything that hurts the Department of Justice necessarily ends up hurting the American people because, in a very real sense, that's who we represent, not in the technical, attorney-client relationship way, but we represent the interests of the American people. So when you read a headline in the Washington Post like Justice Department struggles as thousands exit and few are replaced, can you talk a little bit about not only the brain drain from DOJ, but what I've been referring to as the ethics drain, which is, almost as bad as the number of people leaving. It's the nature of those people who are leaving.
Yeah. So the Washington Post wrote a story that got a lot of attention, and it really highlighted the numbers of people who've left. And one of the many things we've been doing in the last 9.5 months is tracking who has left, where they've left from, which offices have been particularly depleted, which have been completely eliminated. So we have been carefully tracking numbers. We provided those numbers to the Washington Post, and they're pretty staggering. We've seen a departure of 5,500 DOJ officials. A huge percentage of those are lawyers. And among that 5,500, well over 200 have been fired. And this is all unprecedented. It was so rare for anybody to be fired from the Justice Department. And the reason the people who have been fired is because they've worked on cases that this administration doesn't like. It's because they have in the past upheld the rule of law. For example, over 80 immigration judges have been fired, we think, because they were committed to making sure that due process was being performed at the Justice Department. People have been fired for being friends with the wrong people, for being related to the wrong people, for having previously done things to support their employees who they believed were being discriminated against. Um, it's absolutely stunning and brazen, and this administration has expressed no interest in following civil service laws, civil service protections that have existed since the 1970s, and some have existed since the 19th century, that make sure that our civil service, particularly the Justice Department, operates in an apolitical way, that it will continue, that it serves the American people and not the person who's in the White House. And, without those civil service laws being followed, of course, we're going to see what is happening now. The administration is pushing people out who they think are going to get in the way of this president's agenda. And it's been devastating to the department. And, aside from the institutional knowledge and talent we're leaving, something that, isn't talked about a lot is, are we going to be able to get these people back? is DOJ going to be regarded as one of the most prestigious and important places to go and practice law or be a law enforcement agent? Um, what, why would people think that this kind of purge and perversion of justice as a principle isn't going to happen again with a future presidential administration? I mean, DOJ has been such an attractive place for lawyers and law enforcement officials to work for forever. And if people now know that the institution can be politicized and weaponized so easily, can we really expect them to come back? I mean, you don't go to DOJ to become rich. You go to DOJ to represent the United States, to serve the public, and to practice the most exciting law you could possibly imagine. And getting people back, making the department seem like an attractive place to work again is going to take so much work and just years and years to do.
And if I can put an exclamation point on that, we're going to have one hell of a rebuilding mission on our hands when this long national nightmare is over. And I think that phrase perfectly characterizes the Trump-induced darkness that we are living through and fighting against right now. But we're going to have to rebuild. And I think whether we can do it successfully, Stacy, as you say, is as of yet uncertain. But I feel like we have to try. Let me talk
And
about, I want, go ahead, please. No.
well, I was going to say on that point, like there's been a lot of discussion recently about rebuilding, and we are really, I think, in the middle of the storm, and we need to remain laser focused on what's happening now and trying to counter it and doing everything we can to preserve the rule of law right now. But rebuilding, it's going to take a lot more time and resources to rebuild than it has taken to tear much of it down.
Yeah.
And that project needs to start now. And there's been a lot of talk out there about rebuilding, about how it needs to happen. Justice Connection is planning to build a project to start doing that work. And why I think we are going to be an important player in the landscape and the rebuilding landscape is because what we are going to do is bring former career DOJ officials to the table. These are the people who understand the department the best. These are the people who were there across administrations, who know all about DOJ's virtues and flaws, and will be best positioned to know how to build it in a way to make it more durable, to make it fairer, to make it more just, to ensure that this cannot happen again, that it cannot be torn down so easily. So, I think the rebuilding project is crucial, but I think it's really important to have people doing it who were part of the apolitical career workforce and, not coming at the project from a partisan perspective or a political perspective.
Well, let's transition to talking about Justice Connection, even though I'm dying to ask you about the various divisions at the department, not only what they've done to civil rights, but what they've done to the PIN, the public integrity section, what they've done to the environmental enforcement and environmental crimes divisions, what they did to OSADEF, which is just so contrary to everything that Trump and company are preaching to us with respect to what must be done to, for example, human beings on boats in international water. I mean, I want to talk about all of that, but let's first focus. Let's focus on Justice Connection, what you all are doing, because the minute I learned about your organization and your mission, I'm like, okay, one, I want to plug into it. Two, I want to support it. And three, I want to get the word out because, as you say, what you're doing now is not only helping people who need help now, but you're preparing to help us all rebuild when the time comes.
Yeah. So I founded Justice Connection on January 31st, which was exactly 1 week after I resigned from the department. And I knew after the election that this administration was going to attack the civil service. And I knew that they would especially focus on the Justice Department because, frankly, there's only one federal agency that investigated and prosecuted this president. So I knew that DOJ would be especially vulnerable. And I knew that the rule of law could be viewed as an impediment to the administration's goals. And DOJ is the primary agency in our country that enforces the law, that enforces the federal law. Of course, the courts interpret the law, but DOJ is the federal agency that primarily enforces it. So I knew that employees were going to be under attack. And in fact, Russell Vogt, who's the current OMB director, said after the election that the administration's goal was going to be to put federal employees in trauma, which is a horrendous, appalling thing to say. But I took him at his word, and he absolutely set about achieving that mission. So I thought about, what could be done, and I realized it couldn't be done from inside the Justice Department. It would have to be done from outside the Justice Department. And I ran an organization inside of DOJ that supported employees for about 8 years. The organization existed for about 8 years until this administration basically forced it to shut down. So I knew that DOJ employees would trust people who used to work there, other career employees. I knew that we had to do this from the outside, and I knew that it had to happen fast. So I wrote an op-ed in the New York Times about a week before the inauguration, and it was basically a call to action. What I said was federal employees, including at the DOJ, were going to be under attack, and we didn't need to be told to stay in the federal government to, protect our democracy, to make sure that our democratic institutions could survive. We knew better than ever how critically important the civil service was and how critically important DOJ employees are. We didn't need to be told that. We needed support if we were going to stay. So I decided that my efforts would be better served on the outside trying to create such a support organization for DOJ, because that is the department I knew. And I think this should happen at every single federal agency. But I knew DOJ, and I knew that people knew me, and I knew that I could build something that they would go to for help. So we launched the organization, and just within a couple months, we built some really important support networks. We built a legal pro bono legal network where we now have hundreds of DOJ alumni lawyers who are representing DOJ employees pro bono when they get fired.
For free for any non-lawyers out there.
Which is, it's hard to find. And these are not just, these are not, no offense to lawyers who are on billboards, but these are former DOJ lawyers. DOJ lawyers are, with very few exceptions, the cream of the crop. So these are excellent lawyers, and these are lawyers who want to support their former coworkers. And we are giving them a way to do it. So they are agreeing to represent their former coworkers, all of our former coworkers, for free, again, when they're terminated or when they are under investigation criminally or congressionally, or if they need urgent ethics advice, when they're asked to do something illegal or unethical. So that has just been an incredible service. And now, most DOJ employees, when they're terminated, are coming to us. And DOJ alumni lawyers are, delighted that they're able to help. And we provide training, we provide malpractice insurance, and this network is up and running and, again, providing an incredible service. We also launched a mental health support network because Russell Vogt, as I said, carried out with his goal of putting federal employees in trauma. And two people who ran major mental health offices in the Justice Department helped put this together. And we recruited over 100 mental health providers who are now seeing DOJ employees who need support. And this is helping them stay. We launched an employment support network where people who are getting purged or who feel like they need to leave are getting our help finding new jobs. We have a media support network where our communications director, who's a long-term communications specialist for the Justice Department, is providing people with free media training so they can join us in speaking out. And he is giving media trainings almost every day. And that is helping us, amplify our voice in a way we couldn't otherwise do that. And people who are getting these trainings are then going out and speaking out in the national media. And we're also helping people when they have information that they need to get out. We're helping them do that. We have been supporting a number of the whistleblowers you've seen in the news. Um, and we're also helping people get information to reporters when they feel like that is necessary because traditional whistleblowing avenues in many cases are no longer available, such as the inspector general or the office of special counsel, or in many cases Congress. So we're serving a lot of important roles. And then in addition, we're speaking out ourselves, and we've been covered in national news outlets almost 150 times at this point. And we just launched a Substack, which is a great way, as you know, to get the word out. And we are having DOJ alumni write pieces about the work they did so that people understand what DOJ does, because a lot of people just don't. It does everything. I mean, DOJ's work touches on almost every aspect of all of our lives. So we're trying to explain that and what it means when you purge employees, and what it means when you eliminate offices and, stop prosecutors and FBI agents and environmental lawyers and civil rights lawyers from doing their work. What does that mean for Americans? What does it mean for our community safety? What does it mean for our national security? What does it mean for our fundamental rights? So, former DOJ employees are writing about that on our Substack, and we're also creating videos with those alumni speaking out. We've done letters with thousands of DOJ alumni who have signed on to speak out publicly about what we're seeing at the department. So we're doing as much as we can. We're a tiny, tiny organization, but we're not getting a lot of sleep, and I think we're having an important impact.
A tiny organization that needs to grow, and that I know the folks I've been watching some of the comments are ready to help it grow. So how can they find you? How can they best support what Justice Connection is doing?
Yeah, I mean, we when I started the organization, I didn't realize that most organizations don't launch with $0. That was, news to me. And we are 3 full-time employees, and we are all from the Justice Department. We all work there for many, many years. So, we work all the time. What we are looking for right now, is to fundraise so we can build, because we need to be bigger. There is so much more we could be doing with more resources and more staff. So, you know, money is like the idea of asking for it is just anathema to everything, everything I'm about. But yeah, I mean, we're in the middle of a big fundraising drive so that we can continue to exist, and that's so we can expand. And we have really exciting expansion plans, including a rebuilding project, that we won't be able to carry out without the support we need. So, you can learn all about us on our website, which is thejusticeconnection.org. You can see all about what we've done. And we are, again, we are in fundraising mode. If you are able to support us, you can go to our website and there's a donate page. There's a donate button.
And let me just emphasize before we finish up, when we have organizations on the outside of government now that are populated by people who intimately know how the Department of Justice is supposed to work, and you all are the people who can be there for the people who are both still in government and for the people who have either been wrongfully pushed out, maybe they've taken a buyout, maybe they just felt like they had to leave because they could not work for this administration. I would find it very hard to work for this administration. I think the importance of an organization like that knows exactly what these folks need by way of support is so critical. And I'm reminded of something else that I'm involved in. The National Institute of Military Justice has something called the Orders Project. Back in the 80s, I was an Army JAG prosecutor before I joined the Department of Justice, and they're doing something similar to you all. They are, not to distract attention from Justice Connection, I'm not going to do that, but they are providing real-time information, including attorneys who can tell members of the military about, lawful orders versus unlawful orders, and the need, the obligation to disobey unlawful orders, like kill those human beings in international waters. So there's a parallel there, but what Justice Connection is doing is exactly what folks both in and out of the Department of Justice need. And I feel like it's already part of the rebuilding mission that we're going to have to undertake in the future. So thank you for deciding to do this. 3 employees trying to tackle all of this, but I'm glad to hear it sounds like you've had lots of people come forward and volunteer, not just donate, but volunteer their services, lawyers, mental health providers, job counselors, and all of that is just, it's brilliant what you're doing for, the DOJ employees and alums. So I thank you and I applaud you.
I really appreciate that. And I really thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk about our work.
Yeah. So thank you, and if other issues pop up in the coming days and weeks, we can jump back on, continue to talk about it, and hopefully continue to win support for the work you're doing. So thanks for jumping on. Thank you everybody for this midday chat. I'll see you again later tonight. Bye all.
Thanks.